began in 2011 when I moved to Gan Eden, more specifically kibbutz Magan Michael, which is a kibbutz along the Mediterranean coast. Magan Michael is located maybe half a kilometer away from up the beach from Jizor Azarka, which is an Arab fishing village, also on the coast. And though geographically close, the two, because of their differences in access to resources, have a very wide gap between them, between these two villages. So, when I lived in Magan Michael, I was very, very aware of Jizor Azarka. And by what I mean when I say very aware, I mean that we were instructed very strictly not to walk too far down the beach. Be careful where you walk. And whenever a kibbutznik's bike was stolen off the kibbutz, the canned response was always, "Oh, an Arab took it." So one night, my friends and I liked to sleep during the summer on the beach in Azula. And we were sleeping, and the next morning we woke up and my friend Nir's phone was missing from our tent. And when he did the find an iPhone thing, it pinged the phone to the center of Jizor Azarka. And the story has a happy ending because my boyfriend at the time's father had a friend in Jizor Azarka, and he was able to retrieve the phone really easily, like within the hour, in Baya. And it turned out that the phone was taken by a teenager because that's what teenagers do. They steal phones. So I spent a year and a half living about half a kilometer away from Jizor Azarka, and also what feels like a world apart from Jizor Azarka. So then I went home. And then I came back this year, 2018. And it just so happened that one of my friends was planning small trips around the country to see the sights, and she asked me if I was interested in joining her to stay at a guest house in a tiny Arab fishing village on the coast, Jizor Azarka. 7 years had passed since I had been there, and of course I said yes. So with the echoes of the kibbutznik suspicion in my head, don't walk too far down the beach, the Arabs stole my bike, the Arabs stole my phone, I entered into Jizor Azarka, which admittedly is a hard place. Itamar when? It's not an easy place to go. But we walked into this village, this town, and now I was able to see it through a wider lens. So we were staying at this guest house, and we were greeted by Halima. And Halima, I feel very heart connected to Halima, a 14-year-old girl, and she was the daughter of Ahmed, who was one of the owners of this guest house. And she welcomed us, we got all set up, and it was late, we went to sleep. And the next morning, Halima came and she woke us up. Her mother, Haifa, had prepared a full breakfast for us, my friend and I. A breakfast of homemade pitod and hummus. It was beautiful in their family home. And we sat around the table and we all ate together. And as we were eating, the door was open and there was a rooster crowing outside in the yard. Just crowing and crowing. And as we were sitting in the kitchen, a cat, I could see, it was facing the window, and a cat was walking back and forth across the windowsill. And in the background, dogs were barking all the time. And I think all these animals, this animal activity, led me to ask Halima the question, as she and her family were sharing stories about their family and their life. Halima, did you ever want a pet? And she answered me with, I did have a pet once. I had a pet dog, and he got stolen. So she continued to tell me a story about her dog, and then to tell me the story about how one day, a few years later, after he disappeared, how she was walking in the Carmel Mountains, which are just right across the highway from Jizr Zarqa. And she saw her dog with a Jewish man walking through the forest. And as soon as the dog saw her, he ran to her. He knew her right away, and he jumped up on her, and he started licking her face. And as she walked, he followed wherever she went. And the Jewish man called the dog by another name. And the dog looked and stopped and looked toward the Jewish man and looked toward Halima and really hesitated, not really knowing where to go. He was a pet beloved by two people from two different places, caught in the middle and not really sure where he belonged. And so eventually the Jewish man called his name one more time, maybe with a whistle, a strong whistle, and the dog turned around and ran back to this man. So Halima tells this story to us, and it's a story. I lost my place in my card, so here we go. So Halima is telling us this story, and there's no accusation in her voice. There's no blame. She's not accusing anyone of taking her dog or accusing the Jewish man for stealing it. Who knows what happened with her dog? It was a story of just true loss and sadness and pain. And something about her story really rang true for me. It really resonated with me. I think about the complexity of this place, my experience here, the things that I've seen, what I've witnessed. This feeling of having something that's ours, that's a source of comfort, a source of security for us, something that contributes to our identity as a person and how we experience the world around us, something that we've cared for and loved, and then to lose it, to have it be taken away. And even one step beyond, to know that that thing that we loved and that was such a huge part of us and our lives is still there. It still exists, but it exists in the hands of someone else, and we just have to know that and live without it. I think just like Halima did, blame aside, that this is a story of sadness and of loss. And I think that's a universal human truth that we can all feel and that can resonate within all of us. So it's not easy. As I reflect back, I reflect on Halima and her family and the bigness of them. And I think it's not easy to open your home, to share your stories, your table, your family with people who you don't even know. People who are outsiders, who are coming into your space, and here it is, giving with so much grace. And so as I walk away from this year, I hope for myself and for all of us that we can find an equal grace and kindness and open-heartedness that equals that of Halima and her family as we move forward in our work in the Jewish community and our work, solidarity work with Palestinians and with people around the world in need of allies.